Welcome to our channel, where unforgettable stories come to life. We're thrilled to have you with us today. Before we dive into today's incredible story, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers all around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on tomorrow's special story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now sit back and get ready for today's unforgettable tale. Tourist tried to fight a royal guard horse. The consequences will blow your mind. The sun was shining brightly over Buckingham Palace, casting a golden glow on the iconic gates as tourists gathered around, phones in hand, ready to capture the famous changing of the guard ceremony. Among the crowd stood Alex Carter, a 28-year-old American tourist who stood out not just for his neon green "I Love London" shirt, intentionally misspelled for a laugh, but also for his overconfident swagger. Alex had already had a few beers by this point, his third one in the span of just a couple of hours. His loud voice cut through the hustle and bustle of the crowd as he elbowed his way to the front. "Come on, man, move your selfie stick," Alex barked at a Japanese tourist who was just trying to enjoy the moment. He was annoyed that the crowd, in his mind, was standing in the way of his perfect shot. As the changing of the guard ceremony began, Alex's eyes narrowed on the royal guards standing in their crimson tunics and towering bearskin caps. He scoffed audibly. "These guys are just glorified mannequins," he muttered under his breath. "Bet they'd faint if I poked one." Around him the crowd shifted uncomfortably. An elderly British woman shot Alex a disapproving glare, her face full of disdain. "Young man, there are traditions here," she said, her voice shaking with disbelief. But Alex, completely uninterested in anything other than his own amusement, rolled his eyes and interrupted her. Yeah, God save the tea or whatever," he muttered, dismissing the woman's comment as if it were nothing more than a silly old tradition. He crushed the empty beer can under his foot as he took another swig from his nearly finished drink, his smug smile widening. "This whole thing's a circus act anyway," he added, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. But then his gaze landed on something that caught his attention. Avalon, the Queen's lead guard horse. The massive black stallion stood at attention, next to his rider, muscles rippling under his polished coat. His mane was braided with gold ribbon, and his saddle gleamed with royal insignia. Unlike the guards, who had become objects of mockery in Alex's eyes, Avalon stood out as something truly majestic. But Alex, drunk and self-assured, wasn't about to let that stop him. "Now that's a fancy pony," he muttered, slurring just slightly. "Bet it's all show, though." Feeling emboldened by his alcohol-fueled bravado, Alex ducked under the rope barrier separating the tourists from the guards. A stern voice immediately rang out from one of the soldiers nearby. "Sir, step back immediately," he commanded. But Alex ignored him, sauntering up toward Avalon. The horse's ears twitched, but he remained still, unshaken. "See, even this thing's scared of me," Alex taunted, stepping closer to the massive stallion. He reached out to grab Avalon's reins, confident that the horse would either ignore him or just be another piece of the show. But as soon as Alex's fingers brushed the leather, something changed. Avalon's head snapped toward him with startling speed. The horse's dark eyes locked onto Alex's, and there was a flash of something, intelligence, recognition, that sent a chill down his spine. Avalon's nostrils flared, and his massive frame tensed like a coiled spring. The crowd gasped collectively. Even the guards stiffened, their attention now entirely focused on the interaction. Alex hesitated, just for a moment, but his arrogance quickly took over. "What, you going to cry, horsey?" he sneered, yanking the reins. That was the wrong move. Avalon's ears flattened against his skull. With a deep, menacing snort, the horse reared up, lifting his front hooves high into the air, inches from Alex's. The crowd went silent as Alex stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet. His beer-soaked shirt clung to him, and he fell hard onto the cobblestone pavement. The crowd erupted into a mix of gasps and laughter as Alex struggled to regain his balance, his smug expression gone, replaced by genuine shock. Avalon landed with a thunderous clack of hooves, his glare never leaving Alex. The message was clear. Try that again, I dare you. The horse's presence was now more than just regal. He had become a force of nature, a symbol of the power and discipline that Alex had so carelessly mocked. Alex scrambled backward on his elbows, his palms scraping against the rough stone. His sunglasses flew off, and for the first time that afternoon his cocky attitude cracked. The crowd's mixed reactions, some gasped, some laughed, only made it worse. Alex finally managed to push himself up, brushing off his jeans in a desperate attempt to salvage some dignity. He tried to laugh it off, but it was clear that the situation had taken a turn he hadn't expected. Avalon's eyes, cold and intelligent, locked onto him, and Alex could feel the weight of the horse's judgment on him, as though Avalon was silently reminding him, some lines, no matter how hard you try, you cannot cross. The crowd around Alex shifted nervously as Avalon's massive frame loomed over him. His arrogance, once brimming with confidence, suddenly began to falter. The horse's reaction had taken him by surprise, and for the first time that afternoon, the loud, overbearing tourist didn't know what to do. His earlier bravado was quickly draining away, replaced by a flicker of fear as Avalon's dark eyes bore down on him. The horse's strength, his power, had been on full display in that single moment. But Alex wasn't ready to back down just yet. "Whoa! Easy there, Trigger!" Alex called out, his voice shaking slightly as he attempted to mask his growing panic. With a nervous laugh, he tried to dust himself off, attempting to play it off as if the entire scene hadn't just stripped him of his pride in front of hundreds of people. His heart was still racing in his chest, but the last thing he wanted was for anyone to see that he was rattled. The crowd's murmurs filled the air, mixing with a few stifled laughs as people realized what had just happened. Some recorded the incident, their phones capturing Alex's humiliation for the world to see. Alex, still trying to regain control, glared at Avalon, who stood perfectly still, towering over him. The horse's posture was regal and unwavering, like he was daring Alex to make another move, to challenge him once again. "You got spooked by a stupid horse," Alex muttered under his breath, trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. The words were meant to sound dismissive, but they fell flat. Avalon didn't move. His eyes, cold and calculating, were locked onto Alex. The horse wasn't afraid. He wasn't angry. He was simply a creature of discipline and control, something Alex clearly didn't understand. "All right, fine," Alex said, louder this time, forcing himself to straighten up, pretending like he wasn't humiliated. "It's just a big deal because it's a fancy horse. Whatever. Let's move on." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it wasn't going to end that easily. Avalon wasn't just any horse. He was trained, disciplined, and steadfast. His presence was a lesson in itself, one that Alex had no choice but to learn the hard way. But that stubborn streak inside Alex wasn't done. He couldn't just let it go, not like this. He had already embarrassed himself, but deep down he couldn't stand the thought of backing down to a horse, of all things. With a quick glance at the group of teenagers nearby, he grinned, the spark of defiance still in his eyes. "I bet I can make him move," Alex said, his voice rising with challenge. His friends exchanged uncertain looks, but Alex was beyond caring. The crowd was still watching, recording, and now he had to prove himself. He had to show them that he wasn't afraid, that he could control the situation. Without waiting for a response, Alex darted toward Avalon, this time not aiming for the horse's face but his side. He raised his hand, planning to slap the horse's flank, thinking it would be just like something he'd seen in cowboy movies. The moment before contact, Avalon's ears twitched, a clear sign of his awareness. And then in a flash, Avalon's powerful hind leg lashed out with lightning speed, striking the air with a force that made the crowd gasp. Alex's eyes widened as the wind from the kick whipped past him. It wasn't enough to hit him, but it was close enough that he felt the force of it. His feet lost their balance, and before he could react, Alex tripped over himself, landing flat on his back. His phone flew from his hand, and his arms scrambled against the cobblestones as the crowd burst into laughter. Some gasped in shock, while others couldn't help but laugh outright. The once cocky tourist was now a spectacle of humiliation. "Whoa!" Alex yelled, scrambling to his feet. "Easy there," he said, his voice shaky but trying to mask the panic now rising in his chest. Avalon, however, wasn't even looking at him. The horse simply adjusted his stance, head held high, as if to say, "Consider that a warning." The crowd's laughter only grew louder, and one British tourist filming the entire scene muttered under his breath, "Well, that's going viral." The guards, who had been silently observing the interaction, exchanged quick, knowing glances. One of them stepped forward, his voice stern and unyielding. "Sir, you are trespassing on royal grounds. Step behind the barrier now." Alex opened, his mouth to argue, but was instantly silenced by the guard's commanding presence. As his face turned crimson from embarrassment, Alex reluctantly backed away. His eyes darted around, avoiding the gaze of the tourists who were still recording him. He could already hear the notifications pinging on his phone. His friends, probably watching from the pub, were no doubt laughing at him. But Alex was done. His pride had been thoroughly shattered. It wasn't just Avalon who had taught him a lesson. It was the entire experience, the crowd, the guards, the sheer force of his own embarrassment. But Avalon, the majestic stallion, wasn't finished. With him yet, Alex's heart was pounding, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins as he struggled to steady himself. His eyes darted from Avalon, who stood there unbothered, to the growing crowd, who were now fully aware of what had just happened. The moment was surreal. Just moments ago, he had felt invincible, laughing off the guards and their stiff traditions, mocking the royal guard as if they were nothing more than living statues. Now, as Avalon stood tall, unmoving, his eyes locked on Alex with that cold, unflinching gaze, Alex felt something he hadn't expected: fear. Alex gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand, trying to regain some sense of control. The crowd was laughing, some recording the scene, others exchanging amused glances, but he wasn't done. Not yet. His ego was too bruised, too hurt to walk away. He had to show them, show himself, that he wasn't afraid of this horse. He couldn't let the moment end like this. Not in front of so many people. All right, I get it. The horse is upset," Alex muttered to himself, trying to shake off the humiliation. But his voice wavered. He was trying to convince the crowd and himself that he wasn't rattled. But deep down, he knew it was too late for that. Avalon had already shown him who was in charge. But Alex was stubborn. His gaze shifted from Avalon to the guards, who were still watching with stoic expressions. He could feel their eyes on him, waiting for him to back down, to show respect for the traditions they upheld. The thought made him cringe. He wasn't going to be the joke, not here, not today. The horse had reacted, but Alex wasn't ready to let it go. "Let's see if you're really as tough as everyone says," Alex muttered under his breath. His eyes darted to the group of teenagers nearby. They were watching, waiting to see what would happen next. A sickening sense of pride crept back into his chest. He needed to prove something, not just to the crowd, but to himself. Without thinking, Alex stepped forward again, this time more cautiously. He avoided Avalon's head but moved to his side, determined to make the horse flinch, to show the crowd that he wasn't scared. He had seen it in the movies, seen cowboys slap a horse's flank to make them move. This was no different, right? But before he could even make contact, Avalon's ears flicked, like a warning, like a shot fired before the real action began. Alex hesitated for just a moment, but then, with all the alcohol-fueled bravado he could muster, he went for it. His hand swung toward Avalon's flank with the same reckless confidence that had gotten him into trouble in the first place. In an instant, the horse moved. It was lightning fast, so fast that Alex didn't even have time to react. Avalon's back leg swung out, not with the intent to hurt, but with the sheer force and speed of a powerful animal who'd had enough. The wind from the kick nearly knocked Alex off his feet, and before he could stop himself, he stumbled backward, his legs losing control. He tried to catch himself, but his feet hit the cobblestone unevenly, and he fell again. Hard. This time, there was no excuse. No saving face. The crowd erupted in laughter, the sound deafening. Alex lay there for a moment, his palms scraping the rough pavement, trying to gather his wits. His pride shattered once again. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, and this time they weren't laughing with him. They were laughing at him. This wasn't the prank he had planned. This wasn't the crowd cheering him on. No, this was him, exposed, humiliated, and completely out of his depth. Avalon stood unfazed, not even glancing at him. The horse simply adjusted his stance, his head held high, as if to say, "Consider that a warning." The message was clear. Alex had tested the wrong limits, and now he was paying the price. Alex slowly scrambled to his feet, wiping the dirt off his jeans, but his hands trembled. His chest was heaving, and for the first time his bravado had completely disappeared. He glanced at the crowd, his face burning with shame. He could hear them whispering, some still laughing, others in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. His eyes locked on Avalon, and for the first time he didn't see a horse. He saw a symbol of everything Alex had misjudged. The guards exchanged quick glances, one of them stepping forward. His voice cut through the noise like a sharp blade. "Sir, you are trespassing on royal grounds. Step behind the barrier now." Alex opened his mouth, ready to argue, but the guard's glare shut him down instantly. There was no room for defiance here, no room for his foolish pride. As Alex slowly backed away, his face crimson, he realized the truth. He had been shown the power of tradition, discipline, and respect. And in that moment he understood that the Royal Guard and Avalon had just given him the lesson of a lifetime. Alex stood there, his heart pounding in his chest as the realization of his situation sank in. The crowd, once filled with laughter and cheers, had now quieted down. The tension in the air was palpable. He had just been humiliated by a horse, by a Royal Guard horse no less, and the laughter around him made it clear. There was no escaping this moment. His face burned as he backed away, the stares of the crowd searing into his skin. The air felt thick with judgment, and his hands trembled at his sides. For the first time since stepping foot in London, Alex felt small. His usual cocky swagger had evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of shame. He had come here, to Buckingham Palace, thinking he was above the rules, above tradition. Now, standing in front of the Queen's Guard and Avalon, he understood just how wrong he had been. One of the guards, a tall man with a stern expression, stepped forward, his gaze unwavering as he locked eyes with Alex. "Sir, you are trespassing on royal grounds," the guard said, his voice firm and commanding. "Step behind the barrier now." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. There was no arguing, no escaping this moment. The crowd, now silent, watched as Alex, humiliated and broken, did exactly what he was told. He stepped back behind the rope, his eyes cast downward in defeat. The crowd's mixed reactions rang in his ears. Some were still recording, capturing the scene for social media, while others exchanged whispered comments. "That was crazy," one person muttered. "Did you see the look on his face?" Another voice was heard in the crowd. "He had it coming." Alex tried to ignore them, but the sting of their words was like salt in an open wound. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he knew exactly what was happening. His friends back home, watching the whole thing unfold online, were probably laughing at him. But then Alex heard something that made his stomach twist. Avalon's snort. It wasn't just a noise, it was a judgment, a sound that seemed to say, "You still don't get it, do you?" Avalon's dark eyes were still fixed on him, unwavering, full of intelligence and disdain. It felt like the horse was looking straight through him, reminding him that he had crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed. Alex swallowed hard. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow. "Yeah, okay," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. "A horse spooked me, big deal." But the words didn't have the effect he hoped. His usual confidence was gone. His shoulders sagged, and he could feel the eyes of the crowd following him as he backed further into the crowd, trying to avoid further humiliation. But Avalon wasn't done with him yet. The horse's ears flattened against his skull, his muscles tense. The stallion's warning snort echoed through the square, and Alex couldn't help but freeze. For a brief moment, the entire world around him seemed to hold its breath. He realized that Avalon hadn't just been angry or defensive. He had been teaching him something. The horse wasn't reacting out of spite. It was a lesson in respect, a reminder that some things should never be disrespected. And that lesson was only just beginning. "Final warning, sir," the guard said once more, his voice a low command that cut through Alex's thoughts. "Leave now, or you will be escorted off the premises." Alex looked up, his face flushed with embarrassment, and for the first time in his life, he felt utterly small. The reality of the situation, his own actions, came crashing down on him. He had been arrogant, disrespectful, and now not only had he been humiliated, but he was about to pay the price for it. But Avalon wasn't finished. The horse's large frame loomed over him, his eyes locked onto Alex, almost daring him to try something again. The sheer power of Avalon's presence was overwhelming, and for the first time, Alex understood the meaning of discipline, strength, and control. He was nothing in the face of it. Without another word, Alex turned away, walking back toward the barrier, his head bowed. He didn't want to face the crowd anymore, didn't want to feel their judgment any longer. As he made his way to safety behind the rope, he felt the eyes of the tourists on him, but it no longer mattered. The lesson had been taught, and for once, Alex wasn't the one in control. He had been humbled by a horse, a royal stallion, with the power to put him in his place. As Alex stood behind the barrier, the weight of the situation sank in deeper. His chest was still heaving, his breath ragged from the shock of the moment. The crowd, once filled with nervous laughter, had now quieted, and all eyes were on him. His phone buzzed again, no doubt his friends from back home having a field day with the viral spectacle. But Alex didn't feel like laughing anymore. He didn't feel anything but a hollow sense of embarrassment and frustration. The moment had been filmed. The footage had already gone viral. Alex knew that. Everyone had seen him stumble, seen him humiliated by a horse, a royal horse no less. His face burned with shame, and as he glanced around, he could feel the weight of the tourists' gazes on him. Some were still recording, some were whispering, but there was a growing realization in his chest that things had changed. He wasn't the one laughing now. Avalon, the towering black stallion, remained unmoved by the drama. His posture was still regal, unbothered, as if he had done nothing more than enforce a rule that needed to be followed. But to Alex, it felt like Avalon had just taught him a lesson in humility, a lesson that Alex had learned in front of hundreds of strangers. The reality of his actions was now undeniable, and there was no escaping the consequences. "You're an idiot," Alex muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible over the crowd's hushed murmurs. He could feel the sting of his own words. He had been a fool. He had come here thinking that mocking tradition and disrespecting the guards was harmless. He'd been wrong, and Avalon, the horse he had so carelessly mocked, had made sure he knew it. As Alex stood there, still trying to gather himself, the guard who had been watching closely stepped forward once more. His face was unreadable, but his voice was clear, authoritative. "You've crossed the line, sir," the guard said, his tone hard as steel. "Your actions have consequences." Alex opened his mouth to argue, to say something that might salvage a shred of dignity, but the guard's piercing gaze silenced him. There was nothing left to say. He had been shown, in the most public way possible, that some lines were never meant to be crossed, especially not with the Queen's guard, and certainly not with a horse like Avalon. For a moment, Alex wondered if he could just slip away, disappear into the crowd, and pretend this never happened. But deep down, he knew he couldn't run from it. The video was everywhere. His friends were probably watching, laughing at his expense. Worse, the entire situation had been captured for the world to see. There was no escaping it now. His phone buzzed again, but this time Alex didn't even check it. He didn't need to. He could already imagine the messages. "Dude, you just got schooled by a horse." The thought made him cringe. He had been publicly humiliated, and the worst part, was he couldn't even blame anyone else. It had been his own arrogance that had led to this moment. The crowd's laughter was starting to die down, but the sting of it still hung in the air. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He glanced over at Avalon, who was still, standing there calm and unbothered. The horse wasn't angry, he wasn't even upset. He was simply a creature of discipline, unshaken by Alex's mockery. Alex's shoulders slumped as the reality of his mistake hit him again. He had mocked Avalon, mocked tradition, mocked everything that stood for respect and honor. And now, standing here behind the barrier, he finally understood what he had done. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone called out, "Mate, just give it up." "You're done." The words hit Alex like a ton of bricks. They weren't mocking, they were a reminder, a simple truth that Alex couldn't deny. His ego had led him to this moment, and now it was up to him to accept it. Just then, a voice rang, out, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "Sir, you're going to need to leave." The voice belonged to a police officer who had approached with a look of quiet disapproval. Avalon, still standing tall, watched over Alex like a silent guardian, as if the horse himself had been the one to bring order to the chaos. Alex's pride took another blow as the officer's gaze fell on him, and without waiting for Alex to respond, the officer spoke again. "You've been disrespectful to the Royal Guard," the officer said, his voice calm but unwavering. "And that has consequences." For the first time in hours, Alex's bravado finally slipped. He was completely and utterly at the mercy of the situation. No longer could he pretend to be the loud, arrogant tourist. He had been brought down to size in the most humiliating way possible. And in that moment, Alex realized something he had never truly understood before. Respect wasn't just a courtesy. It was a necessary part of life, especially when it came to tradition and honor. As the officer led him away, Alex glanced back at Avalon. The horse was still standing there, calm and proud, his dark eyes now softening ever so slightly. It wasn't forgiveness, not really, but in those eyes, Alex saw something he hadn't seen before: understanding. What did you think of Alex's experience with Avalon the horse? Do you think he truly learned his lesson? Or was it just an embarrassing moment he'll quickly forget? It's fascinating to see how his pride led him down a path of humiliation, only to be taught a lesson in respect by a horse. In a world where arrogance is often rewarded, it's refreshing to see that true discipline and tradition still hold power. We want to know your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a moment where your pride got the best of you? Or maybe you've witnessed a situation where someone learned a humbling lesson the hard way? Drop a comment below, and let's talk about it. We'd love to hear where you're watching from, and what your take is on this unforgettable story. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of our incredible stories. We've got more jaw-dropping moments coming your way tomorrow, and trust us, you won't want to miss them. Share this story with your friends, and let's keep the conversation going. After all, sometimes the best lessons come from the most unexpected places.